Hey Gloomers, welcome back to Nerdhaven. My name is Mike, and today I'm going to be talking about how to convert a custom class in Tabletop Simulator's Gloomhaven Enhanced version 1.2 to the new version 1.3. Now, before I jump in, I just want to give a quick update on the channel because I know it's been a while since I've made a video. First off, the day job that I have is very busy in tax season, so that's been taking up a lot of my time with work. Now that tax season's over in the US, I'll have a little bit more free time. But in the free time I've had, I've still been doing work related to Gloomhaven. It just hasn't been videos on this channel. So if you've been following me, you know that my main project right now has been to take all of the legacy classes and convert all of the assets to Frosthaven style. That project's getting pretty close to done. I've completed Jaws of the Lion, including the revised Demolitionist, and I have all but 5 of the Gloomhaven classes completed. So all those assets are available on my shared drive, and you can also play them in Tabletop Simulator with my mod. I've also been doing a little bit more modding, so I built some trackers and things to help with the custom content Unity Guild to be able to playtest some of the new classes. I started getting more into 3D modeling with Blender and painting some of the 3D files that these custom classes have had sculpted for 3D printing in play. I'm actually painting some of them for the custom classes so that it can be imported and used in Tabletop Simulator as well. So I'll be making some videos to cover some of those things once I, I've finished up a bit more of it. So I think that'll be pretty exciting for people to check out. Also with Frosthaven around the corner, my Gloomhaven item shop binder has been pretty consistently one of my most watched videos. So with Frosthaven around the corner, I have a new binder that I'm going to be building for that item shop, and I'm actually going to go through step by step, and I'll show each step of the way of how I actually got the text and everything onto the front of the binder. So if you wanted to do something like that yourself at home, you can. So now let's talk about Tabletop Simulator Enhanced version 1.3. Alright, so version 1.3 brings a number of new changes, and I'll end up making a full video covering all those changes, but for the purpose of this video, I wanted to focus on 3 specific things. The first is that Tabletop Simulator now in the Gloomhaven mod has the ability to register custom content assets directly into the mod and treat them as if they were part of the mod all along. And this includes not only custom classes, but custom scenarios, road and city events, obstacles, really any asset that would be part of the mod, you can sort of import in and add that content. Enemies, things like that. And one of the main reasons that the development team has cited for making this was so that they could very easily make compatibility with Frosthaven once Frosthaven drops. It'll be very easy to add that content into the existing mod. The second thing is a new context menu. So if you look at the table here, you can actually keybind. If you go into options, and under the bindable keys, you'll see there is a show context menu. I have it bound to my little side mouse button. And now when I'm hovering over an enemy, I can click that button and it'll give me a menu of all of the available conditions that I could apply to that enemy, as well as a class tracker so that, depending on the class, if you have some need to put your class tracker on an enemy, you can. This makes it very fast to be able to quickly add different conditions to different enemies rather than having to go all the way to the tokens and drag them off and drop them on and hope you get it in the right place. So that's a really big helpful improvement. But on top of that, there's actually a little bit of unique customizability to what's included in this menu. So for certain enemies or certain classes, you may have the ability to spawn something that goes above and beyond just the conditions here. So as the example, you could see the Cragheart. The avalanche card allows him to spawn a boulder. With that, you can create a boulder right here and drop it onto the map. And you don't have to have a little sack of obstacles off to the side that you're dragging from. So similarly, if you have an enemy that can summon, sort of like the cultist can summon skeletons, you'll have that ability to spawn those skeletons directly from that context menu. And this is relevant for custom classes because if you have a custom token, for example, the Diviner has a Rift token, and you want to be able to spawn those, you can do it very quickly from that context menu. The last thing that is going to be covered in this video is the new HP bar. You may notice that there's no more plus and minus hidden on the base of the Mini. Those were hard to get to anyway. I think a lot of people now are using the new hotkeys to add and subtract. But if you do use the buttons, they've been moved up to the health bar up here. But probably more importantly is now when you rotate, it automatically realigns and moves the health bar so it's always facing the players. And so now you can actually have your Mini facing its enemies, and the health bar will continue to face you. So these are all some of the new key benefits, and in order for custom classes to work properly with all the new scripting, you'll need to do some updates on your custom classes if you are a custom class designer. So I'm going to walk you through how to make those updates. All right, so now we're in my my mod here, and we're going to go into my Frosty Nerd box, and we're going to pull out the Diviner envelope. And right away, this is the 1.2 compatible class, so we need to make some updates here. So I pulled a character box out of the envelope, and now I need to pull the Mini out of my character box. This is the first thing that we need to update. So linked to this video, you'll see there's some template files that I have hosted on my shared drive that you can use. You can also use any of the scripts for the LUA and the XML from any of the existing boxes that are in the game, but the envelope will not be the same script as what is on the in-game envelope. So you'll need to use a template for that anyway, so I would just suggest for the purpose of following along with this, using all three of my templates. For editing scripting, I also recommend using Notepad++. This allows you to actually view the text in the language that it's written, so it makes it a little bit easier to follow along. This is only a Windows product, so if you're a Mac user, you'd want to look for an alternative like Sublime Text. But I find this a lot easier to work with than Notepad. You can have multiple files open, and you can even put like little markers on certain lines if you want to keep track of where something is. And so here is the LUA file and the XML file that we need to update onto our Mini. First off, the XML file is the same for every figure. This should not be edited. It should be exactly the same for all the figures, and we can go right in and we can make that update. So I'm going to go into the UI here, Control A to select all, and Control V to paste my new text from my template right in. So that part's done. Next is the LUA. There's a couple of things that may be helpful to pull out of your old LUA before you get started. For example, your class color. Things like starting health is 10, your HP bar offset. This may need to be played around with, but these are things that you'll need to populate in the new template in a slightly different place. So let me just take this, and I'm going to copy this info and put it off to the side. And I can close this now because I don't need it. And now I'm going to go through and work my way down. Before I start really diving into this, I also want to say I built an Excel file that has just fields for the different values that you need to populate. And once you populate them all, it will actually generate these scripts for you. So you can just copy and paste them from the Excel file in here. If you prefer to do that, that'll be later on in the video. I'll have some markers so you can just fast forward right to that part, and I'll cover how to use that instead. But for this, so the first thing we want to do is find this info table, and we need to set and define our HP color. This will be the color of the health bar. And I had that here, so I'm just going to copy that over and put it here. My starting health, I'm going to replace this with the starting health for the class, which was 10. Again, that was also here. Next thing I need to do is go down here and find my frame offset. I'm going to set that to 160. That's what it was before, but we can play around with that if we don't like the height. One thing I'll point out is that in addition to just setting the starting health and color, in this info table, if your class has a number of stances like the incarnate, or if it has some sort of resource that you can collect, like the Artificer, then you can actually track that with a secondary bar that would appear below your health bar. And there's some additional script to be able to do that. So you'll find that actually there'll be some instructions also attached to this video if you want to know how to add those into that class. This is it. So we're going to take this and we're going to copy it. And we're going to paste that over our LUA that's here. A quick way that I can check what happened with those scripts is I can copy with Control-C on my my figure, and then I can Control-V to see now. I have the color set on the bar. The plus and minus have moved up here. They are still on this, but I believe that's because, I don't know if it'll work on a reload. Yeah, I think I have to save and exit for that to completely go away. All right, so fun fact, I just figured out what was going on with this. The actual model has a minus and plus sign built into it. So for whatever reason, the button that you see is gone. There is no button there anymore, but the actual graphic has a minus and plus on it. So I know on some of the others, like we just saw the Crag Heart at the beginning of the video, it's not there anymore. So anyway, so we've updated our mini, and this will work now with 1.3. So we can open up our box, drop that in. One other thing we need to do while we're in here is take our trackers. You're going to pull this out, and what you need to do is you need to change the name of the tracker to whatever the name of the class is. So this is the Frosthaven Diviner, because I have my modified cards. It includes the space. You need to, because that's what I'm going to use when I actually write it in my envelope. And so you need to write it the same way. A good example would be like the Beast Tyrant, which has a space in it. You would have a space there. You wouldn't remove that. You'll also want to make a note of the URL for the tracker. This would be, if you have an existing class, it would already be in your envelope script, so you could pull it from there. But again, I'm just going to make a little note of this here so I have it, because I am going to need that later. Now that I've renamed my tracker, I can reset my bag, drop my tracker in, and now I'll get my updated tracker name, and I can drop this in my bag. The box also needs to be renamed, rescripted. So in the older script, there's some text in here in the LUA that refers to the name of the class and starting health. That all goes away. And again, I'll have a link to what should go in there. This will now be the same for every class. So I could just copy this here and Control-Alt to select everything that's there, and Control-V to paste over it. Here's my updated box. And now I'm going to reset my envelope by dropping my new updated box in here. So the last thing for us to do is to update the envelope script. Now, again, as you go through, the beginning of this actually looks identical to the beginning of the mini, so you might actually get confused and think you're looking at the same script. But once you get down here to the register and onload section for this onload function, you'll notice that it's quite a bit different. So first piece here, class name. As I mentioned, when you're naming the tracker, this has to be named exactly the same format as it is in the tracker. So I'm going to put in my Frosthaven Diviner. Class HP, this actually needs to either follow the track that's in the old, you can see actually this track here, you can use that, but there's a new code that you can actually use for the standard character hit point track. So for the normal 6, 8, and 10 starting hit points, those tracks are sort of predefined in the script. And there is a specific reference that you can put in here. So being a 10 hit point class, this is considered a high hit point class. And I'm actually going to replace this with the class API HP progression high. If it were an 8 hit point class, I'd put medium instead of high. If it were 6, I would put low instead of high. But again, you can actually, in these brackets, you can spell out, if you have something that deviates from those three, you can spell that out here, and this will still work. All right, the next thing for us to update is the tracker URL. So again, we had this saved from before. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to replace it here where it asks for that image. This will allow the context menu to show the class's tracker as an available option in order to be able to drop it onto other figures on the table. Perks can actually be copy and pasted directly from the old LUA script. And so if you take a look at my table of perks here, I can copy that and I can paste that right in. This will work as is, but there actually is a new script code that can be used for ignoring scenario effects or ignoring item effects. And, that if they ever change anything in the future, or if there are other ignores or things like that that need to be supported for Frosthaven, the preferred way I would say is to use the new terminology. So I'm just going to copy. You'll see exactly what it looks like here. For this ignore, it's just going to be this class API perk type ignore scenario. If it were ignore item effects, it would be ignore item. Next up is abilities. Again, for the most part, you can actually copy and paste directly out of your existing script. Quick little tip here, you can actually scroll down to the end and then shift click in order to select all. Just make sure you select the right range. I actually don't want that last little bracket, so I'm going to take that and copy it. Again, we'll go to my notepad, paste this in, and this will work right out of the box with one exception. The ability types term has actually been revised, and in 1.3, instead of being called ability types, it will now be called class API.ability type. So we need to find and replace all references of that within our abilities. So the best way to do that is in something like Notepad++. You can highlight all of the abilities. I can Control F to go into Find, go to my Replace tab. I actually already typed out what I want to replace it with. But I want to replace any references of ability type with the period at the end. And I want to replace it with anything with this class API ability type. And sorry, it's actually ability types. I only want to do that within my selection, so I have that checked off. And I'm going to hit replace all. And you can see it went in and replaced all of those references within my abilities. So now that is done. At the end of your abilities, if your class has a custom condition, which the diviner does not, you can actually include some additional script to add that condition here as well. The ability to do that will be covered in the documentation that will be linked again in this video. So if that's something that you want to do, feel free to go ahead and look at that to do that. For solo scenarios, this function to add solo scenario will not do anything with these hyphens here at the beginning of it. If your class has a solo scenario, you can just delete those, and that will make this line of code or script active. And then you just need to update this with the name of your solo scenario. Don't need to do that for the diviner because it's built into Tabletop Simulator, and that's good to go. So I'm going to leave that as is. And that's it for the envelope script. So now I'm going to copy this, paste it over. Here's my new updated envelope. I'm going to save this object. And this is almost good to go. But let me show you one other thing here. We need to actually tag this as a class envelope. If you look at the documentation that's attached, you'll actually see all of the different types of assets that can be tagged. And upon load into the mod, they'll be registered in. Class envelope is one of them. It's very important that you spell this exactly right in order for the mod to pick up on it and register it correctly. But this is a class envelope, so now that I've applied that tag, you can see it highlighted here. Again, I'm just going to quickly save my object just so I have a copy of it. But I also want to create a bag. And this bag, I can name whatever I want. I'm going to call it loader. But the important thing for this bag is we need to give this the tag Gloomhaven custom content. It may look like that got truncated and cut off. That's just because the size of this box it doesn't allow you to. But if I were to start deleting Gloomhaven, you could see that that whole thing's there. And once I hit enter, you'll see the full tag loaded up here. So you can verify that it's spelled correctly here. By having that tag, when this bag gets spawned into the Gloomhaven Enhanced mod, the mod will actually recognize that tag and attempt to look at the contents, and any of the contents that has the different supported tags will be pulled out of that bag, and a copy of it will be made in the mod as if it were part of the mod all along. It'll leave the copy in the bag as well, but the envelope, if you have a summon that you need to load in for your custom class, if you have unique obstacles or other overlay tiles, anything like that, your road and city events, treasure cards, all sorts of stuff is supported, and it'll just automatically go to the right place for you, so you don't have to spend time setting it up when you're loading into a new campaign. And so now I'm going to take this bag, I'm going to take my folder and drop it in. And now I'm going to save this as my loader object. Now let's hop over to a fresh new campaign in version 1.3. All right, great. So this is a brand new campaign. You'll see that the classes on the table by default are just brute through Tinkerer. And watch what happens when I spawn my loader here. As soon as I drop it on the table, you see stuff starts happening. My Frosthaven Diviner class got loaded, and it is ready to go and play with. So I can pull this out, open it up. Here's my class. The hit point tracker moves along. I have my plus and minus signs on the bar. When I open my context menu, I have the Frosthaven Diviner icon that I can use as a class tracker. I can apply it and it'll pop over my head. All right, so now let's go through the same example again, but using my spreadsheet tool. So I have again a 1.2 diviner here, so none of this has been edited yet. And I'm going to bring up my little tool here. First thing I need to do is set the name of the class. Do not include the race or species here, it's just the name of the class. Health track, again, I'm going to go with high because it's a 10 hit point class. You would only need to use this if you selected custom from this dropdown. Hex color of the class. Again, I have my notes that I had off to the side, so from my old, that comes in handy, but again, you could look this up and adjust it if needed. Text color by default is white, so you only need to put this in here if you want the text color to be a different color. If you have a really light color, class color, then you may want to change it to black, for example. If your class has a resource, you can name the resource bar, the minimum and maximum number for that resource, the color of the bar, the color of the text for the bar. And then similarly, if you have stances, I supported up to 4 here on the spreadsheet. You could put the name of each stance, the color and text color, and then the image name that would show to the left of the bar for each of those stances. Next, we're going to go to frame offset. For this class again, we found it was 160. Now, we didn't really talk about this a whole lot before, but basically, if you find that the health bar is too high or too low, then you can play around with this number and change it a bit. To give you a general idea, the Tinkerer is at 160 by default, and the Brute's at 230. So from the starting classes, that gives you sort of the smallest to the biggest. I think for the most part, that's a pretty good range. Sometimes it might have to go a little bit higher if you have a really big character. Or if you need one of those resource or stance bars, then you need to bump the health bar up a bit in order to make space for that second bar below it. And then the tracker URL as well. And if you have a scenario name, you can put that in here, otherwise you leave it blank. Going to ability cards. So you need to write the name of all your abilities here and their initiative. Be careful when entering this in for initiatives that are single digits to include a 0 in front of them. I have a hyphen at the end of my ability names so that they are distinct from the default diviner class. But normally you wouldn't need to do that. Another just kind of point to mention here is these levels will show automatically. The last two will be level 9, the two before that will be level 8. So as you're entering it, it might look wrong, but by the time you're done, it should look right. You can key over these numbers if you need to. You would have to do all of them because the formula would sort of break if any one of these were manually keyed for the most part. But you shouldn't need to play with that unless you have some unique, I guess, progression of cards available. For example, the Jaws of the Lion classes only have one level 5 card. So I had to break that and sort of manually key those in. And then this will give you the script that needs to go in the envelope in order to just get things to work. If you need to do enhancements, I have a tool over here that I use that I prefer because I can actually pull out the coordinates in Photoshop when I'm designing the cards, and I can plug it in here, and this does the math for me. But otherwise, you can use the enhancement tool that's in the Tabletop Simulator mod. There's an enhancement tool that's available. And you can take these cards once they're functional, and you can go through that process in order to add enhancements to these cards so they're supported. Next thing is perks. I pre-filled this out as well. Basically, the way this is supposed to work is you would list any class-specific cards that would show up in your perk deck, and that will then make them available to add through this table. So this table will allow you to add anything that's down in this table below. The standard attack modifier cards are available to remove from here. And you can also choose whether or not you want to remove, ignore scenario or item effects within a single perk. So for perk 1, it's just, remove 2 -1 cards, so on and so forth. You can probably see how this works. And here's the output. But again, you don't have to take it. You can take it from here directly, but this is all going to write it directly into the LUA files for you. Lastly, if you have a custom condition, my tracker supports up to 4, although I'm not aware that there's any limit. You can put the name of the condition, the URL for the image, and the maximum number of stacks, which I think for most conditions is going to be 1. But for something like a shield that supports multiple stacks, you can support that with a condition as well. I'm going to leave them blank for my diviner. And so really, like, all I had to do is fill out this. These I had to key in, but again, you don't have to do this if you already have that, that detail saved somewhere else. Same thing for perks. And now all my scripts are right down here ready for me to pull. So my figure script is already updated with all this information that's pulled from the form that I filled out. Everything's ready to go for me to copy over. So I'm just gonna copy it all. Let's go to Tabletop Simulator. There's my LUA. Remember, I said before the XML is the same for everything for the UI. So that's not driven off of my form, but I do have it there just so it's, easy to get to. So here's my mini. That's ready to go now. Can put that in my box. Remember, I need to pull my tracker out. This I do have to rename, so that is still a step. So I have to rename this. Now I can change the script for my box. Again, this is the same for every box. And almost just did the mistake that I have made way too many times, which is updating it in the UI. I need to update the LUA with this new script here. So now that that's been updated, I can reset my envelope. Go to the script editor for the envelope. Copy and paste that over. Make sure I have my class envelope tag. We'll spawn the bag here. We'll call this loader again. My Gloomhaven custom content tag. Now go up and again go into a fresh copy of a brand new campaign. And again, you can see class loaded right in. And I'm ready to go. You got my health bar working. Automatically rotates with me. And I have my context menu. Everything is working great. And that'll do it. So hopefully this was helpful. Again, there's a text version of the guide, so if you want to be able to just look something up quickly, you can. But this is how you would convert a class from version 1.2 to 1.3. And one last thing that I want to do is I want to show how to add a spawnable to your character. Spawnable can be added in a couple of different ways. So if you have ability that spawns a certain obstacle or trap or enemy, so if you want to add one, you could tie it to an ability. And so if a specific ability allows you to spawn something, then it'll only show up in the context menu when that ability is on the table. But if you have something that recurs like the Diviner's Rift, then you can actually have it registered to the class so that it exists for that class regardless of which cards are on the table. So we're going to register this under the class. The first thing that I need to do is pull out my box here, and I'm going to pull my infinity bag for rifts and pull out a rift. And now that I have this out, I need to give this an obstacle tag. I actually have it in my tags up here, so I can click on it, but if you didn't have that there, you would just need to type it out. And so now this rift is tagged as an obstacle. And when I put it in the bag that's tagged as a Gloomhaven custom content bag, then when this bag gets dropped on the table, this will be one of the things that the game registers. It will register this as a custom obstacle along with all the other obstacles in the game. So now I can delete these, and I also need to update the LUA for my character envelope. And if we scroll down here in the class registration, after the tracker image URL and the perks is more or less where I would put this. So in here, before I actually start my perks, I'm just going to create a little bit of space here, and I have my notepad that shows what the script would look like. So spawn is the trigger here. We're going to spawn an element. This is the type of element. It's an obstacle. You would change this to trap if you wanted to spawn a trap, or you would change it to enemy if it were an enemy. This is the name, is Rift. There's no other conditions for mine, but if you're spawning a trap, you could actually indicate that it's a damage trap. If you're spawning like a map tile, you can actually indicate that it has a scenario marker on it or a hit point bar. But for me, this is pretty straightforward, so I'm just going to take this, copy it in. I'll paste it into my LUA, and now if I go back up here, you can see this spawn is listed now here. And so I can close that. I'm going to drop both the envelope. Remember, the envelope is already tagged as a class envelope, and my rift is tagged as an obstacle, and this bag is tagged as Gloomhaven custom content. So we'll save this object as my loader, and we'll load into a fresh campaign. And as soon as I drop my bag, you'll see the class gets loaded. And if I bring the class over here and open it up, then when I open the context menu on my Diviner Mini, you'll see I now have the option to create a rift. When I create that, it creates it over the figure's head, and I can pick it up and I can drop it wherever I want. Good luck, and happy glooming.